speaking of the fantastically wealthy, the unfair, and so much more, a great scoop from, and I want to make sure I say his name correctly, from Teddy Schleifer over at Puck News, which is a new outlet. Let's put this up there on the screen. Teddy uncovered that Jeff Bezos has now given $100 million to the Obama Foundation. It is the single largest philanthropic donation of its kind in terms of presidential libraries. And according to Teddy's reporting, the $100 million donation was midwifed by Jay Carney, Bezos' political Sherpa, and the former Obama press secretary. Before Obama's press secretary, he worked for one Joseph R. Biden as his press secretary. So here's where it stands right now. Jeff Bezos, the richest man in America, well, second richest, I guess, if you count Elon Musk's stock. So let's say Jeff Bezos, the second richest man in the world, worth over $100-something billion, just gave $100 million to the former president of the United States' his presidential library. He was like, I want it to be named after John Lewis, out of the kindness of his heart, of course, because that's why all people give people significant amounts of money. The single largest donation to the entire Obama Foundation and to the Obama Library, and it was brokered specifically by Jay Carney, a former Barack Obama press secretary, and with close ties to the Biden administration. I remember the most extraordinary thing that happened during the campaign is when Jay Carney on his Twitter account, which he often uses to contest stories about Amazon, tweeted in his personal capacity how he was all in for Joe Biden. And I'm just like, this is crazy. I mean, you have here the head of global vice president of communications for probably one of the most powerful companies in the entire United States, just openly cheerleading for a presidential candidate. And now we learn that he himself brokered this $100 million deal between the two of them. And now Valerie Jarrett, who is a longtime Obama aide, says that Bezos and Obama, quote, have seen each other socially from time to time.
They're in the same circles.
I mean, they're in the same circle.
Yeah.
Hanging out with, the most revealing thing Obama did is right after leaving office was going to go hang out with Richard Branson. I still believe hanging out on a private island with a billionaire.
Really sent quite the message, didn't it?
That's who he is. And that's they're celebrities now. The Obamas, they're doing these deals with with Netflix. They're Instagram influencers. I mean, at their best, Michelle Obama's doing arena tours for her book, Becoming, and I don't begrudge them. Like, they're becoming, lifestyle figures.
I 100%.
Well, okay, I begrudge them on a personal level. I'm saying it's not illegal, but it's gross.
Yeah.
And, Matt Stoller, who's, a big foe of the Obamas, let's put this up there on the screen. He points out that unlike all presidential libraries, Obama's library will not be run by the National Archive, and thus is not subject to government rules because it's not a library. And research historians are actually offended because it is a private, nonprofit entity rather than the National Archives and Records Administration, which is the federal agency that administers the library and museums for all presidents going back to Herbert Hoover.
Yeah.
So Obama is above all the other presidents. He creates his fancy little project. By the way, I don't know if you guys remember this. I covered it at Rising whenever the Obama Foundation called in all of Chicago's business leaders to push back against environmental activists who had concerns about the building of the Obama Foundation.
Well, part of the controversy here, too, is that the fake presidential library, the library that isn't actually a library.
It's a monument to Obama and how great he is. That's really all
it's being built in public parkland.
Of course.
So there's actually an ongoing lawsuit against the city especially because it's being run by a private foundation rather than by the National Archives and the government agency the way it normally is. They're arguing it's inappropriate for the city to give public parkland to a private foundation.
Yeah, and it is. Look, I actually grew up in a town with presidential library, probably unlike most people. They're awesome. In George H.W. Bush's library, it's cool because they have stuff, the pieces of the Berlin Wall or whatever. I went there when I was like a little kid. And you go and
I've
get
been
to see
the LBJ one.
Right, you get to see, the Air Force One mock-up. The LBJ one is a good library.
I've also been to the Bill Clinton one.
Yeah, me too. Hope, Arkansas. The Reagan Library is actually very nice. I'm trying to think if I've been to any others. Anyway, these libraries are useful places for children. They have conference rooms, you know. It was even part of the community. You could like rent it out or whatever. And you know, the Bushes, Barbara Bush and President Bush were there all the time. I mean, when you're a little kid and you get to meet the president. Like, anyway, what I'm saying is they can actually be very, very good for communities and for perpetuating history. It's one of the original places that I actually got to learn some history and see some of that stuff. But to have it then be degraded to not even a real library, not a real research institution, because people go to that Bush Library where I grew up in order to actually do research, and now have it at a place where Bezos is pumping $100 million into this thing for look, this is pure oligarch patronage. We all just call it for what it is,
well,
you know?
Both of these guys, what they have in common is they're very interested in their public image and their legacy.
And that's Bezos, yeah. Oh, yeah, he cares a lot about voting rights. Get the hell out
And
of here.
so, he really cares about Black lives, as we've covered here. Let's ask Chris Smalls about that, who
ask
we had
his
on
black
the show.
employees and ask.
We had on the show yesterday.
Right.
I would say, I mean, listen, it's hard for me to get super outraged about, you know, the inner workings of the fake presidential library. But what I would say overall is, you know, we've been covering these stories about how the biggest problem for the Democratic Party is not any of these, you know, culture war flare-up, the CRT, those debates or whatever. The actual biggest problem for them is they're seen as out-of-touch elite assholes. And so when you have like Nancy Pelosi officiating the Ivy Getty wedding, you see those photos come out. When you see, it's not just Bezos, by the way, also involved in this library are a bunch of different Bill and Melinda Gates, Sean Parker, Reid Hoffman, Mark Benioff, all involved. So when you have that association, you're supposed to be the party that like cares about working people. At a certain point, and that point has already occurred, people are like, you're full of it. I mean, we see who you want to hang out with. We see who you're really interested in, you know, being part of their circle. We see what's going on here. And it also ties back to, in my mind, you know, Democrats love to talk about the problem with money in politics, which is a dire problem and something we cover here a lot. But then they play the same game.
Yes.
I mean, they're not any different.
Didn't we, we were pointing this, one of the stories we considered covering at some point is that after Citizens United, it's actually Democratic dark money groups that are spending more money than Republican groups.
Yeah, so how are you going to have any credibility? And then it hamstrings their agenda. I mean, this is the reason why the Biden agenda has completely collapsed from whatever, you know, moderately good thing it started as. It's all because of their ties into the donor class. So it has real world consequences ultimately for what can get accomplished here and also for what people believe their government is capable even of doing.
No, I completely agree with that. And, you know, this is just naked, outright. It's a payoff. What it is it's like social laundering. It's why Bezos owns the largest house here in Washington, D.C.
It's reputational laundering.
Yes, it's reputational laundering. It's why he bought the Washington Post. If you screw with Bezos, you're screwing with one of the most powerful papers here in D.C. And he has set himself up as a power broker. He's hosting salon dinners. From what I hear, he is, now that he's not CEO of Amazon, he's here all the time. He's always having politicians over at his Kalorama mansion, which is like 3 houses altogether. I've never been invited.
That's the same neighborhood that Obama used to live in.
Of course, he lives, actually still lives there.
Has
he has a house very close by. Okay. I walk my dog by there sometimes. That's the closest I'll probably ever get there.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.